Hi everybody. Please note I have my Happy Christmas t-shirt on. Welcome to the TMF reference model, the final meeting of the year. We're very excited to be here. Lots going on with the reference model and looking forward to speaking to you all. And apologies if anybody didn't like the Christmas song, but it was the most joyful one I could find for this slightly dark, cold, miserable day. So delighted to have 132 of you on the call. That's absolutely brilliant. So what we're going to do today is really talk about our future, and as a TMF reference model, talk about a little bit about the community, a little bit of, and then really go into some detail about what are we doing with the reference model, where are we going, etc., etc. So as a starting point, and I'd love you all to really please take part in this, I would like to launch a poll. So if everybody could please answer the questions. There are 4 questions. Very simply, what type of company do you represent? Where do you live? How long have you worked with TMFs? And then finally, what I'd like you to do is actually talk about how you're involved in the reference model, whether you're a steering, and basically go for the sort of most involved you are. So in other words, if you're on the steering committee, just pick that one. If you're an active group member, in other words, groups.io, you're part of a team, pick that one. If you are a subscriber, so you get our overall emails, that one. If you're just from LinkedIn, that one. And if you've just happened to randomly turn up, then that one too. I have got a message to say that there's an error. Fran, what's the error?
Karen, it says poll to start end error. That's the error that I got.
Oh, that's really weird. Hold on a second. Let me try and launch it again.
Yep.
Wait. That's really weird.
And then when I tried to submit the questions again, it wouldn't let me.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Relaunch poll. We'll clear existing. Right, start again. Hopefully that works. I have no idea why it doesn't work. Does that work for anybody? Yes, it does. I can see answers coming in. Excellent. Thank you. No idea why that happened. But anyway, technology, hey? Can always rely on technology. And if anybody, so I've got somebody coming in saying they're from Asia, definitely put where you're coming from. That would be fantastic. And I'm really sorry. I'm laughing at how many golden oldies there are. Yeah. And if you don't work in TMFs, I'd love to know why are you here? And if you're none of the above, what I'd love to know as well is, on the final question, is how, if you're none of the above, how did you even find out about this meeting? I'm very pleased everything's working well. That's brilliant. So go on, don't forget to throw the comments in. How many have we got? Okay, so that's impressive. I have 90% participation in the survey. Thanks, guys. Okay, it means everybody's concentrating. Let me end the poll and share the results. So hopefully you can see the results. And if somebody, Aaron, you're online, I hope you're concentrating. Can you copy the results for me, please? And if he doesn't, I'll pick on somebody else. Usually I can rely on Todd. Can you do it? I have 2 or 3 people that can,
I got it, Karen.
Got it. Oh, Aaron's got
Karen,
it.
these ones screenshots? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We've got them. Thank you. So let's have a look at the results. So mostly sponsor, and quite a lot of CROs. That's great to see that many CROs. Fantastic. We have at least 1 investigator here. And other, love to know where you're from. Where do you live? USA, Canada, South America, Europe, including UK, clearly. And 1 person from Africa. So I would love to know where you're from. I can't count myself as Africa, unfortunately, even though I lived there for 20 years. How long have you worked with TMFs? less than a year, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, golden oldie. So that's fantastic that we've got such a good spread. And I would love to know where you work if you don't work with TMFs. And finally, steering committee. Excellent. We have the whole steering committee here. 43 active group members, 49 subscribers, 8 LinkedIn, 12 none of the above. So that's brilliant to have a good spread. So what I wanted to do was just remind everybody about our community and explain how we're put together. So we've got a steering committee of 14, all of whom are on the call here today. Then we've got 333 active members, so those people that are involved in groups, that are participating, that are getting involved in the zone teams or the device group, etc., etc. We've got 1,500 subscribers, so they're the people that listen to us, that get emails sent through, etc., etc. And we've got a LinkedIn community of 3,800 people, which is amazing that we've got that many people. But I'm also very, very pleased to see that the majority of the people that are here today are those people that are either steering committee, active, or subscription. Anybody who's not any of those things, make sure you go onto LinkedIn, go onto the reference model. If someone could just post in the chat the URL for the reference model website, then we can go in and you can join, and welcome to the group. So what are we here for today? We are here to talk about the future of the reference model. And it's been an amazing journey to get here. We started the reference model 11, 12 years ago, and it's been done by volunteers. It's been looked after by volunteers all the way through, which is absolutely fantastic and really appreciated. But the reality is life is changing, things are changing, and we need to make sure that the reference model always stays future-proof. So a few things about the reference model today. It's owned by you guys. Somebody actually asked me that question. I can't even remember why they were asking me about IP related to the reference model. The IP, there is nobody who owns the IP. It's owned by you as a team. It's freely available. You can go onto the website and download it. We control the content. Importantly, it's not a standard. And I think this is one of the things that has driven us to have lots and lots of conversations. Because it's not a standard, it doesn't have a status, we don't have a standing with the health authorities. So when ICHE 6R3 comes out and they go to all the different groups for consultation, we're not one of those groups, because we are a group of people who effectively run the content of a TMF, not being associated with the standard. We are completely volunteer. We don't get any funding. We give a little bit of money between us as a steering committee to keep the website going and to do the things that need to happen. But other than that, there's no funding. And after more than 10 years, we really, really want to make sure that the reference model is future-proof. And I know many of you might have come to the meetings beforehand and heard a little bit about what we've been doing in terms of the future, but I wanted to just give you a bit of an oversight as to how we've got to where we got to today. So one of the things that's driven us to thinking about the future is the fact that we've got lots of goals and initiatives that they've been started well before 2020 and 2021. And people have come to us and said, can you do this and can you do that? We've talked about how we support the future in terms of Excel spreadsheets or databases, etc. But the problem is we don't have the structure, the resources to reasonably be able to do everything and be able to support everything the way we want to support them. So what we did is we did what's called a strategy on a page, and thank you very much to Fran Ross walking us through this. Basically, it's called a SOAP. Basically, it's about us sitting down and saying, what do we want for the reference model? What are our objectives? What are the success factors? What's going to make us stay future-proof and be able to, as the world changes, keep up with the world? And what we've done is we've identified sort of 4 individual pillars of things that we want to do. So just to tell you how we got here from a timeline perspective, I did streamline this down because it was very, very busy, but I just want you to understand as a community that we've been looking at this for a long time, and we got seriously started looking at it over a year ago, where we started looking at how we could put things into databases, how we could try and support the TMF reference model. We've had lots of discussions. We've presented it, and the green boxes are where we've presented it to you as a community. Once in April April, once in September, and once in December. We did the SOAP process, the strategy process, from April, and then we've done workshop after workshop, and we've discussed what the success factors are, and we've agreed them, and we've then taken a formal vote in terms of an overall direction. And again, that's important because there's been a lot of discussion through the steering committee, and now's the time to bring it to you as a community and say, this is what we want to do, and give you an opportunity to comment. So thank you to the 150 people that we have on the call today. So what are our strategy pillars? So the first one is, and I'm not going to go into detail because I'm going to hand over to my steering committee team members to actually go into the detail. The first one is about evolution, evolving what we do. The second one is about our community. The third one is about becoming more formalized. As I said, if you remember, we're not engaged with the regulators. We're not sitting at the table for ICHE 6. And the fourth one is expansion. And these are all things that we've heard over time from everybody. So I'm going to hand over, I believe, to Jamie to talk about evolution.
Thanks, Karen. So evolution. So this is probably my favorite pillar, but as an industry, and I'm sure those of you who are so deeply involved in the reference model, a way to manage the TMF reference model in a different way. So we've been doing the same thing for the last 10 years, but how can we extend the granularity of the reference model, incorporate different types of studies and data, because we've heard that from a number of you. And then also, how do we implement tools to actually do this, whether it's a database or some other kind of mapping ability in order to manage the reference model and also distribute it and have people consume it. The second pillar I'm going to cover also, and that is community. And then I'll hand over to Russell. So community. So we do have so many of you on today who have been part of this community for the last decade, or maybe you're new, but we want to ensure that there's continuity and a vision for the future as well as leadership. So how do we do that? We feel that we need to strengthen the community engagement to continuously drive the evolution. So new people, new ideas, new technologies are always coming out. But we also want to safeguard the continuity of the reference model leadership. And then finally, identify and encourage active working groups to actually produce some deliverables. So some of the working groups that are in place today may not have deliverables that they're projecting for the future. So we want to ensure that there are deliverables coming out of those working groups. Over to Russell.
Yep, thanks, Jamie. Thank you, Karen. So the third pillar was formalization. As most of you are aware, I think the reference model is the standard architecture used for the organization of content in almost every eTMF application. However, it isn't a formalized standard. Regulatory inspectors are very familiar with the reference model, and there is an expectation that your TMF will be organized in alignment with it. They know how to navigate it, they understand it. So to that extent, there is already a degree of recognition. However, there are many organizations still who do not use the TMF reference model or anything like it. And so formal recognition will certainly help to make it more universally adopted and help to standardize approaches, and perhaps more importantly, enhance operations and improve collaboration between partners, between CROs and sponsors and investigators and so on. The third point on here is about promoting industry adoption of the exchange mechanism standard. So Paul and the exchange mechanism team have done a great job with the exchange mechanism, but adoption, unfortunately, has been quite low. So we're hoping that formal recognition of this standard would help greatly promote the use of it, as well as use of the model, and improve uptake to provide a greater flexibility for organizations to transfer content between themselves and also between systems. Next slide, please, Karen. So along with the four pillars, we also needed to consider how we're going to rebrand the TMF reference model to more accurately reflect the different types of activity that we want to take on. We have at present produced a lot of best practice guidances and documentation. And if I look on the list that we have on the website, there are, as well as the guide, implementation guidance, user guides, and process maps that we have there. We've also, in the past 24 months, developed a real-world studies document index, which is moving outside of clinical trials and into the clinical studies arena. We produced an excellent guidance on managing email communications. We have a template for a TMF plan, and we have other guidance, including things on data conventions and TMF quality control and inspection readiness. By moving out into bigger areas, that clearly moves us outside of merely the TMF reference model itself into operational good practices. And what we'd like to do is try to get together and agree much more standardized approaches for lots of things, including things like TMF metrics. We already have a metrics 101 and definitions of what metrics means on the website to help people both internally and externally engage much better with the TMF reference model itself and the best practices around its usage and implementation. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Russell. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Todd, also on the steering committee. Todd, can you talk us through the implications of this?
Yeah, so hopefully, based on what Jamie and Russell explained there, everybody can kind of understand the vision that we have for the reference model, all the things we could do and we can do potentially, and a lot of that is driven by your suggestions and ideas and wishes. And in the past, we've kind of been held back by our existing structure and limited scope. And we feel now is the opportunity to take advantage of going beyond that. And but to do that, to actually accomplish those things, we realize that we really need more formal support. And that comes in lots of different shapes and sizes, right? Operationally, we're the steering committee is like you, a group of volunteers. We made up our own rules of order, and we operate that way. We have limited technical expertise and capability. Financial is really another key thing. If we want to actually drive more results and we want to get into providing more dynamic content available to the industry rather than just a spreadsheet, because again, all the big ideas and initiatives are going to require us to kind of go beyond a spreadsheet. And we need to have some money and technical skill and technical capability to do that. And it's very difficult to do that as a general volunteer organization, get into questions about legality and operating in different countries, all kinds of things. And I think you've heard from everybody about our interest in building more influence with regulators. And as Karen said, having a seat at the table for things like ICH. So really, as we step back and again, going through this exercise, thinking about what should the TMF reference model become? What are we really trying to do here? We realize we want to go beyond the spreadsheet, and we want to provide the industry with more valuable content, health, best practices. We want to be part of regulatory conversations. It's been as Karen mentioned at the outset, the TMF reference model has grown amazingly, and being a spreadsheet was a good part of that, right? It makes it really easy for people to pick up. But I think as many of you probably recognize, the spreadsheet is kind of reaching its limits, and now we have, there's so many good ideas and things that we think we can do to further the idea of trial master file management and taking it into more of a digital age by going beyond a spreadsheet. But to do that, we need help. And so you can go to the next slide, Karen. So in recognition of that, as a steering committee, after, as Karen showed, many discussions and time, we have unanimously agreed that we need to affiliate with a formal organization who can help provide us some of that operational, technical, financial relationships and influence support. And that's really the big message here that we want to make sure everybody is aware of, kind of how we, as a steering committee, all came to this unanimous conclusion that we've done a great job as a volunteer group to date, and we've made an amazing thing that so many people recognize. but it can be more amazing. And to do that, we need help. And we think affiliating with a more formal organization will give us that help, allow us to still provide value to the industry, still do really important, interesting things as volunteers. But that affiliation is a key decision that we made.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Todd. And I'm going to hand over now to Alison to talk through a little bit about, well, you know, what did we think about when it came to an organization we could work with, and who did we look at? So Alison, over to you.
Sure, thank you. So once we did come to that agreement to affiliate with another a more formal organization, we also agreed on some key search criteria or principles that were important in deciding which organization to affiliate with. So we've outlined them here. The TMF reference model content, we wanted that to remain under this team's control. We also wanted the TMF reference model to remain freely available to the public. We did not want to affiliate for a for-profit company. We wanted an organization that wouldn't exclude any participants, including vendors and technologists. So that was important to us. And we, as those people are very involved in the reference model today, so we want to make sure all groups of participants were included. We wanted relationships and connections to regulatory authorities. We've learned that that's really important. And so when we affiliate with a more formal organization, that is a very key criteria we'd be looking at. And we want relationships and connections to standards organizations. So organizations that focus on standards was important. Next slide, please. So we looked at 8 different candidate organizations that we identified, and we walked through those organizations and looked at some key considerations. So we've outlined here a description of the organization as well as those some key highlights of the considerations. There was multiple other discussion points about these organizations, but these are some key messages we wanted to share with you. So we looked at ACRP, which is a nonprofit organization, focuses mainly on training and certification of clinical research professionals. So it was more training centric rather than standard centric. We also looked at Avoca Quality Consortium. Avoca is now part of a for-profit company. And as you remember from the last slide, we were really trying to steer away from that. The for-profit company is WCG. It's associated with WCG's GCP quality and compliance consulting solutions. So membership is open to sponsor CRO, clinical services, memberships, but individuals from these, but it didn't include members from consulting and vendors. And as I mentioned before, those are important individuals to this group and what we do. Also, Avoca is not a standards organization. So I'm going to shift over and allow Lisa to go through DIA. She's a lot of background in DIA. So Lisa, can I turn it over to you for this organization?
Hey, Allison, thank you. So if the oldies but goodies that are on the phone, you are, and maybe some of the other ones earlier, are really aware that we initiated this TMF reference model team through the DIA. And without the support of the DIA, we probably wouldn't have been as successful as we were in the early days. But we have to remember that the DIA is an information association. It's a collaboration group. You can see here that we initiated the project through the document and record management community. And the DIA is a group of like-minded professionals, right? And it provides a platform for collaboration. Really, it provided us during that time the platform, kind of like a document management area, and our meetings. And that is where they wanted to stay. Somewhere around about 7-8 years ago, we had some conversations with the DIA as a result of some things going on, and DIA had actually recommended we remove the DIA from the name of the TMF reference model. And though some may still call it the DIA TMF reference model, we are a TMF reference model team because the DIA did not produce the reference model. Their members collaborated together, and the DIA doesn't want that ownership. They don't believe they should ownership or make any profit of it. And so we didn't brand it as a DIA reference model from that point forward. So the other really important thing is that DIA is not a standards organization, nor they want to. So we're not saying that we're ungrateful to the DIA and we're ignoring them, but rather actually, you'll hear later that there are some standard bodies that evolved from DIA communities and work groups and drive our industry today. And the TMF reference model is another one of those great, de facto standards that came from the like-minded individuals of the DIA. Okay, go ahead, Allison, to the other ones.
Thank you, Lisa. So health level 7 is a standard for exchanging health information between medical applications. So this standard defines a format for transmission of health-related information. So for example, they take care of patient records, laboratory records, billing type information. So consideration here, it's a primary standard, and other select products are now licensed at no cost. So I think that for this particular organization, because of the exchange of between medical applications, it doesn't quite fit into what our needs are. ISO is an independent, non-governmental international organization with membership of 165 national standard bodies, contains standards for technology and manufacturing. For our considerations, requires being a national standard body prior to joining. So access to standards does incur costs for individuals. So that's probably the main consideration to think about. OASIS is a standards organization with projects on cybersecurity, blockchain, IoT emergency management, cloud computing, legal data exchange, etc. There was an eTMF technical committee in 2014-2015, which was closed November 2017 and is no longer active. So it was not effective at gaining acceptance as a TMF standard in the past. It's unclear if it would be open to trying again. And then we had some questions around, is membership open to all sponsor CROs, system vendors, consultants, and then access relationships with regulators focus more outside of our industry. Okay, and then our last group of organizations we looked at was Transcelerate, and it's a biopharma's group that their mission is to collaborate across the global biopharmaceutical research and development community to identify, prioritize, design, and facilitate implementation of solutions designed to drive efficient, effective, and high-quality delivery of new medicines. It aspires to create a future state for clinical research where there's these challenges are no longer roadblocks to success. So as far as key considerations, membership is required to participate. So your company has to be a member in order to participate. So that limits us. And then deliverables are not available to the industry. So it's only available to the members. Transcelerate is not a standards organization. And finally, CDISC is an open, nonprofit organization that develops and supports global data standards to improve the quality and interoperability of medical research and healthcare. CDISC standards are widely used for study planning and data collection, tabulation, analysis, and submission to the FDA, PMDA, and other regulatory agencies internationally. So key consideration here is very similar structure to the TMF reference model relationship that we currently have established with regulators. So we would need there, and I know Paul's going to go through this a little bit more, but they have some established relationships with regulators. Implementation would generally be very straightforward because they sort of came from a background similar to what we have in place. So as far as any other proposals for organizations to be considered, if there is anything that didn't really stick out to individuals, you know, please, I can see people are putting some stuff in the chat. Please add it to the chat, and we'll go back as a steering committee and just look and see were any of those other ones part of our initial consideration, and if not, we'll look at those and make sure we get this all covered completely. So that's all the organizations that we considered, and maybe why or why not they might be a good choice. But I'll turn it over to Paul next to walk you through a little bit more information.
Great.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly.
Yep. Perfect. Thanks, Alison. That was really useful. So as you saw, there were quite a few organizations that we did look at, and we also had quite a long list of criteria that we had to meet. And we sort of came down to CDISC as a potential finalist. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about CDISC today, what it is, how it works, what it does, and then why we feel it is probably quite a good fit for us. So CDISC stands for Clinical Data Interchange Standards Consortium, and its mission is to develop and support global platform-independent data standards that enable information system interoperability to improve medical research and related areas of healthcare. And what's interesting about CDISC is it's very much global, and it's not-for-profit, and it's really a standards organization primarily. It's been doing it for more than 20 years and has developed some pretty important standards that we use today in clinical trials. It has an experienced leadership team, so it has employees and a dedicated staff of 40 plus individuals who are, some of them are also SMEs, obviously, in different areas. And it's also got a very large volunteer network of over 1,000 industry experts who will give input, and over 500 membership organizations. I'm pretty sure most of you have probably heard of CDISC. If not, obviously they have a website as well that you can look at. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit more about who they are. So CDISC has certain standards that are regulatory required. So things like SDTM. They're widely adopted and they're freely available, so they're downloadable from their website. CDISC also has a very mature standard governance process, and that's really important. It's important to have a good governance over standards so that they can evolve in a controlled way. They also have built out an innovative open source technology platform to be able to manage the standards and provide access to those standards, as well as all of the metadata. And metadata is obviously really important in standards, and metadata is becoming more and more important in the TMF world. They're involved in a wide range of different industry initiatives and projects. Notably, I think what's interesting is the whole digital data flow initiative, which is being put together by Transcellary, which I think is quite relevant for TMF. They also have a lot of different collaborations across the industry with members, regulators, patient foundations, academia, STOs, and the industry as a whole. So next slide. So just to give you an idea of some of those collaborations. So at the bottom of the slide, you can see that they have existing standards development organization collaborations, and notably for us, what's interesting here is obviously ICH, but the others are also of interest. On the left-hand side, there are therapeutic area partnerships, and so notably some of the big organizations that also set standards, like the National Cancer Institute, the NIH, And then Transcelerate, which is, I believe, a very important partner for CDISC, because CDISC has really become almost the standards arm of Transcelerate as they put together a lot of the different initiatives that they have. And then the third area of collaboration, which again is very important for us, is directly with the regulators. So they have strong collaboration with the EMA, FDA, the Japanese regulator, the Chinese regulator, and others. And so they're very much connected with all of these different groups that all help establish standards in clinical trials. Next slide. So what would they offer us as an organization? So potentially formal recognition from regulatory agencies. They would offer us a formalized framework for developing standards. They would offer us dedicated resources for the management and promotion of those standards, technical resources to manage and deploy the standards, publication and distribution of the standards documentation and implementation guides, formalized training and certification on standards, and then dedicated staff for event, education, membership, and volunteers. Next slide. So what would it mean for the reference model if we did become part of CDISC? I mean, the most important thing to remember is that we would still continue to leverage the community to drive content and direction of the model. I think that's really important because it's always been community-led and driven, and it will continue to be so. We would also still have a steering committee to govern the model, which is focused on TMF. But we would be part of a formal organization with funding and resources, which would make a big difference. Todd mentioned that that was one of our big challenges. It would also allow us to better expand the model. So there's a lot of things that we want to do, including having a larger set of metadata and then sort of mapping to a lot of the other models, and also expanding the adoption of the exchange mechanism standard. I think that we would be better placed to do it as part of CDISC. We also want to be able to leverage CDISC experience to be able to promote the use of the standard. Obviously CDISC already has formal ties with ICH, and so I think it would definitely sort of put us in a better position in relation to getting recognition from ICH and regulatory agencies. And then finally, we would be part of a clinical standards ecosystem with a lot better interoperability. I think that that's a really important thing to think about today, because obviously a lot of the different systems out there are becoming sort of TMF relevant, and it's important that we have good interoperability between systems. And this is kind of what CDISC is focused on as well. Next slide. So what's in it for CDISC? Obviously, we've had some discussions with CDISC, and they are very interested in us as a group and the potential to collaborate and for us to become part of their family. For CDISC, obviously, at the moment, they're expanding their scope from just clinical data standards, which is their sort of traditional activity, to more sort of trial design, trial administration, and clinical operations areas of focus. And so obviously that's kind of where we sit, right, in terms of trial administration, clinical operations. I think it's definitely aligned with what we do in the TMF. CDISC is serving as the hub for a number of cross-industry standards initiatives, and the reference model could be part of that. And so this is definitely things like the digital data flow from Transcelerate, and there are other initiatives as well. And then just based on CDISC strategy, there's a natural progression to develop TMF standards, because they are part of the clinical ecosystem. And so in CDISC's mind, you know, they could start from scratch, but it wouldn't make sense. You know, why reinvent the wheel when we can actually leverage things that have already been done? So that's really kind of their take on you know, why they're interested in the reference model becoming part of the CDISC family. And I'm going to hand it back now to Karen.
Thanks very much, Paul. Much appreciated. Great overview. And I'm sure that you can all see But the reason we wanted to advertise this meeting so much and talk to you so much was to say, okay, we're thinking about a significant change in terms of how the reference model is managed. We are going to put together a position paper, which will be a sort of summary position paper. We're saying these dates are very estimated at this point in time, because obviously it's just a sort of a guess. Some sort of paper by February 22 for you to be able to consult on and comment back, and then we'll meet up in March. Now that might be March, April, May, so don't hold us to exactly the timelines, but the plan is that in the first half of next year, we're going to definitely have got back together, looked at other suggestions. So that I saw a suggestion for SCDM, I saw a suggestion for HSRAA, etc. We will consider everything, and anybody who wants to comment on the position paper will have a chance to do so. And then we'll have an implementation plan agreed. Somewhere between March and May, I'm going to suggest we'll have the implementation plan agreed. Now, obviously, this is quite significant. We've spent a lot of time discussing it. And what I'd like to do is really open it up for questions. I'm going to hand over to Fran at this point in time. Take down the screen. So if all the steering committee members could come onto screen, please. And Fran, I know you've got some questions that have already been put to you. And maybe you could just go around and see the questions and get people's views. And anybody who has a question, please post it in the chat. Jamie is going to be monitoring those. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There you go. Right. So Fran, over to you. Fran, you're on mute. Someone always does that.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Oh, so glad to see everyone here from around the globe. It's really delicious to have a global presence for the reference model. Wanted to start with the sponsor community and maybe pick on Mary to find out from a perspective of a large pharma, when you think about moving from a community of volunteers into a more formal standards organization, how does that potentially impact the way life might work at a Pfizer level organization?
Well, from my perspective, I guess I have two things to say. One is the reference model community is fantastic, and it's such a strong community where there's so much great information shared, and I think it's really important that we keep that community. At the same time, CDISC, as Paul has outlined, has a lot of fantastic foundational aspects that will really help us drive the standard to that next step. And I think Karen had on one of her slides earlier, we're not just a spreadsheet. And I think that's really important for us to get recognition across, especially regulatory bodies, so that we can really have this reference model become the standard for the TMF.
Jump over to one of the technologists here. Jill, when you think about having the reference model be a more formal standard, and you think about all the technology that's used now to manage TMF, what kind of impact do you think there might be for a vendor to have to deal with a model that's more formal, more written in stone, as opposed to the Excel workbook that we all deal with today?
Yeah, I can speak from from an eTMF vendor point of view. I think obviously it has a more of an impact. Although I still think the critical result of that impact is probably more about interoperability and how things may be presented to users or available for export in a system, for example. I think there might be obviously some, as we move towards a world where maybe there's required metadata that must exist on each different kind of artifact or document type. Now you're talking about some small changes, but I think in my experience, most of the customers of my product kind of already have most of those things there. So it probably would serve as an extension, right, to at some of the lower metadata level, I would think. Depending on, again, how, who knows 5 years in the future what that looks like, but based on what I know we deal with now, that's probably what I see.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Todd, from my perspective as a vendor, I totally agree. Consistency of everything right down to the lowest level of granularity with metadata. And also just from an inspection perspective, that we know the inspectors use many systems. So having this moving in this direction is a good thing for vendors, I think.
Fantastic. Paul, do you want to chime in there as another member of the vendor community, and especially with the interoperability of the exchange mechanism? Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I'm the technologist, but I'm not able to unmute myself, which is terrible. But no, I totally agree with my technology colleagues that standardization, I think, is a good thing. Interoperability is very dear to my heart, because obviously we spend a lot of time establishing the exchange mechanism. I've also sort of, I've had experience on the CDISC side as well, having spent part of my career in clinical data management as well. And I understand the importance of being able to easily exchange data between systems, and the exchange mechanism obviously is trying to do that. It's all about exchanging information. But I'm also thinking about the future and how other systems that use CDISC standards already, such as EDC systems, have information that's relevant for the TMF. And so being connected to that is going to hopefully make things easier in the future to exchange information, not only between TMF systems, but also other clinical systems that hold TMF relevant information.
So let me throw you under the bus, and Jamie, I'll get to you next. Russell, you work across systems, you work across different clients as a consultant here. We see in the chat that there's a concern potentially about having us be a more formal standard and what that would mean for each individual TMF. Let me toss you under the, well, what do we do to maintain flexibility while we think about becoming something more formal?
Well, I think we need to make sure that we can engineer that flexibility in any solution that we come up with. We don't want to have a standard that is going to be absolutely rigid. I think one of the things that has made the TMF reference model the success that it is today is the fact that you are able to customize it. You can take artifacts away, you can add artifacts in. And that flexibility is really essential, I think, in terms of the model being a success. So any solution that we come up with in the future, whether it be with CDISC or somebody else, needs to be able to have that level of flexibility within it, whilst remaining true to the principles that we've engineered into what we have already.
Thank you. Jamie, I don't know what you wanted to say, but whatever you want to say, go ahead.
So I'm monitoring the chat, so I just want to make sure that we're hitting on what's coming through in the chat. So there was a question from Brandy. Does this have any impact on the release of the next version of the reference model that is currently underway?
I'm throwing Lisa under that bus. Ms. Lisa, can you talk about what we're doing on the back end as we think about this whole evolution, what's happening meanwhile, day to day with the workbook? Can't hear you.
Lisa's on mute. There you go.
Dang it. So thanks, Fran. And I invite my other steering committee members and anybody from the Change Control Board to add to this, which is basically, you know what, until we make the decision, until we make the formal, I think we're going to proceed as normal, right? And consider where we are when the next version comes out and where we are in this process. I don't think that we should stop evolution of the reference model until, if there are critical pieces that we need to update, then we will do that. So I know I have a big change control board with the zone teams next meeting. But I hope we're all in agreement that we're just going to continue to evolve and see how that fits into whatever standard body we would actually be aligning with, and not stop with the work, the good work that we have in progress.
I'd like to just add something to that, if you don't mind, Fran. In our conversations, because we've obviously had conversations with CDISC, and I think it's really important to understand that they are very aware of our concerns, very aware about how we run it and our control. And in all honesty, what we've got set up already with the regular meetings and the change control board, and that is all seen as we've laid the foundations. And I didn't get any impression that there was any move to breaking foundations as such. So I see it as then just building on top of what we have. We obviously don't know all the answers at the moment, but I see it as a very positive thing. So sorry, just wanted to add that.
Karen.
Can I just add one thing to that as well, if I may? I think the one thing that has marked the development of the TMF reference model throughout its life, and I've been involved in it for a very long time now, is a sense of purposefulness. And I don't think in any way that should be compromised moving forward. And we'll have a keen eye on making sure that continues to be our rationale and our modus operandi.
Thank you. Joanne, as a member of the Change Control Board for a long time, and thank you for those efforts. Maybe you can speak about the recent sort of re-energizing of change control in the different zone teams.
Sure. I think we, as a Change Control Board, realized that, this is a volunteer organization, and everybody's day job obviously pulls them away at many times. So there was a recognition that we needed to revitalize all of our zones, and there was a big effort spearheaded by JP, who did a fantastic job, defining what the roles are and retraining and reorganizing and really getting these zones in better shape, so that we did have members, and we now have active members. So I think, moving forward, we're in much better shape. And I think we should continue the sort of status quo of the normal releases until a change really does occur, because we don't want to lose that momentum. And, as we all know, there are tweaks or new things that we need to add to the change, to the reference model. And the Change Control Board is integral to that.
Big shout out to JP, and thank you, Joanne, for that messaging, and everybody on the call. We really, really want the community to stay involved and stay plugged in. The different zone teams are a great way to do that. So if you haven't ever joined a zone before, please consider joining up, and especially since that's all re-energized and revitalized. We really appreciate the breadth of experience and everyone's voice. Not just in these meetings, but in the zone team meetings as well.
So Fran, there's a couple of questions that we want to get asked. I'm going to combine two of the questions and then another one, okay? So is the idea that the reference model would be the standard for all TMFs or a standard? And then the follow-up is it more about information organization rather than information exchange?
Yeah, those are two great questions. And I think when you put TMF in buckets, you're looking at sort of finished TMFs as well as TMFs underway. And so maybe a standard and the standard applies to both TMFs that are active and TMFs that are a little retired. Let me pick on Miss Donna. I haven't heard your voice yet, ma'am. Can you talk about what you think when you see that question about a standard or the standard?
Yeah, I guess I don't see much of a difference because a standard is really not a law, right? So I guess there can be multiple standards. I think that as a group, we're striving to make it the standard, right? Because we've created unity within the industry to do that. But I don't think there's anything that can force it to be law. It's just kind of the effort that we put out there to make it the consistent standard that's followed. So maybe the word I'd like to see used is consistent.
Appreciate it. And Jamie, what was part two?
Yeah, so the follow-up then, the part two of that was, is it more about information organization rather than information exchange? So is it more about organizing or is it more about exchanging?
Well, I think it's about both, but let me go back to Mary again.
I was going to say, pick on Todd, because he actually answered the question.
I was going to say.
Sorry, I
love
had
picking
to
on Todd.
jump in because I wasn't sure we were gonna get to the question, so I figured I'd put it in chat. But hopefully my explanation there kind of makes sense in that it's really about both are important, and in recent years, information exchange has become relatively more important than it was when we started the TMF reference model, right? And our information organization, frankly, has gotten to a really good point where it is, in a way, a de facto standard, even if it's not a literal standard. There's still things that we know the community has interest in, and I saw a question even come in about naming conventions, right?
Yeah.
For artifacts or records in the reference model, right? So that's an example of where our information organization can expand, and we've been a little hesitant to do that in the past for one reason or another. But information exchange between organizations and systems is important, and becoming more so as our records move away from paper to more digital.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Karen, I'm gonna send it back to you now. Looking at the time, we've got
absolutely, because I'd like to wrap it up. I'd actually just like to say a huge thank you to all of you as a steering committee, because we have spent hours and hours and mega hours on this, and I hope as a community you understand the passion and thought that we've put into this. Absolutely, we'll take your comments. We will be putting out a white paper, for a position paper for you to comment on. If anyone has any specific comments, they can email me or anybody else, and we'll bring it to the steering committee. And as I said, really do appreciate we are this is our sorry, very big, important question, Nick. Thank you for pointing out. This has been recorded. We will be going to our guru Eldon to get this onto the website. We'll be emailing around links so that everybody can hear this if they want to. We will circulate the slides so they're available as well. And as I said, we will be having a position paper. We won't be meeting again this year. We are going to be meeting on the 26th of January. I'm looking at my slide to make sure that's the date that I suggested. 24th of January, apologies, I just moved us to a Wednesday. The 24th of January, hopefully that suits everybody. We, as I said, we'll be circulating that. So thank you everybody for your attention. I can't believe we had 157 people on at one stage, which is awesome. Thank you, Eldon. Recording will be on by Thursday. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Have a safe holiday. Happy Christmas. Happy New Year. And here's hoping that 2022 is going to be an easy year for all of us. And we look forward to talking to you then.
Thanks. Thanks, Karen.
Maybe even see you if the pandemic is kind to us.
Absolutely. And I'm going to sing us out with Russell's favorite song.
Not the Grinch.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.